Mad Hatter here, and I had a interesting revelation to myself. When I was going over the fuel system, there's some things that I didn't cover that need to be addressed. And so I'm going to take a short minute here, and we're going to talk about a couple of things. Some of you may know that your electrical system is only as good as its weakest link. That means that if you're running, let's say, number 14 wire, and you're pushing 20 amps, or heaven forbid 30 amps through it at 12 volts, it's going to get hot because it's way overloaded, and it possibly can fail. Typically, wiring gets hot like that, and it starts to break down at the terminals where it's connected, and you have a failure. So more is better up to a certain point. So your fuel system's the same way. And I learned this 40 years ago. You can have a number 10 fitting at the fuel cell and run a 5/8 line from the back to the front of the car, or from the front of the car to the fuel pump if it's a belt driven pump. And the 5/8 line is great, but it still depends on your connections. If you run a 5/8 line and you downsize the ends where it connects anywhere, at the cell, at the pump, at the filter, at the regulator, your system is only as good as those smaller orifices wherever they are and whatever they're doing. And also, in a race car, when you run a single 4-barrel versus a dual 4-barrel, a dual 4-barrel motor is more forgiving of a lacking fuel system than a single 4-barrel is of a lacking fuel system. And why is that? Because the bowls, you have 4 bowls instead of 2, and the bowls are about the same on a carburetor. Then, basically they are within a little bit of being the same. So when you have 4 bowls, if your system is lacking, it takes longer for those bowls to empty going down the track under a load. When you're running a single 4-barrel, you only have 2 bowls to support the fuel system, to support the motor if the fuel system is lacking, to support the motor under hard pull. And if your system can't keep up, those bowls will go down. And sometimes you'll see fuel extensions in the back bowls, that from the jets into the back bowls. Sometimes you'll see bowl extensions themselves, where they'll put an extension between the bowl and the metering block. And that's good and fine. But typically those are a band-aid for a problem. That's the best way I can put it. Now, how did I learn this? It's just years of racing, but something happened when we built our first race car. It was a 440 single 4-barrel, not a big motor, nothing crazy. It was, like probably, 450 horsepower, 500 horsepower at the most. It run like 11 O's in a quarter mile at 3,000 pounds. That tells you what it was. So when we first started, I had plumbed it with what was the name of that pump? I cannot remember the name of that pump to save my life, because I've never used one since. Anyway, an electrical pump, and I plumbed it with a I want to say 3/8 fuel line, copper. Run it from the carburetor back to the back. We had the fuel cell mounted in the back. Had the fuel pump mounted on the frame underneath the fuel tank. And that copper line into that, and the copper line into the fuel tank itself. And we had a mess. I mean, we were both new. I was still learning how to tune it, and the car wasn't running right. It would sound like it was shooting ducks when it launched. And, I mean, it sounded pretty rough. And this guy walks up one day in the pits. I mean, I was beside myself here. I'm sitting on the trailer just like, what in the world is going on here? And this kid walks up, not kid, young fellow walks up. He's probably in his 20s. And he says, you know, I heard your car, and I think I know something that might help you. And I'm like, yeah? Tell me. He said, I don't think you got enough gas getting to the motor. And I said, well, I got an electric fuel pump, and it, you know, plumbed at the back. He said, yep, but I don't think it's enough. I think you need bigger. I said, for this motor? He goes, yeah, all motors. And he said, you got a lot of things there telling me that. And so I said, okay, so what are you thinking? He goes, let's check it. Oh, how do you check it? Go get me you got a gallon jug somewhere? And I did. I had a 2-gallon sprayer that we used to cool the car. And so I dumped water out of it. I said, right here. And he goes, all right, I need a hose. All right. We took the fuel line off at the carburetor. And we hooked a rubber hose to the fuel line. And we run it into this tank. And it was marked with gallon and 2-gallon on the plastic container. And I said, okay. He said, all right, I need this, and this is just my experience. He said, I need this thing to be full or a gallon in 30 seconds, 35 seconds, something like that. I think he might even said 40. But he said it needs to have a gallon of gas to the front of the car in 40 seconds to support any kind of horsepower. Okay. So we went over there. I turned it on, set my watch, and watched. It took 1 minute and 15 seconds. I think maybe even longer, 1 minute and 30 seconds. And I'm like, oh, crap. He said, yep. Here's your problem. I said, okay. He said, you need to get rid of this 3/8 fuel line. And you need a bigger pump. He goes, I worked for TRC, which I don't remember, Total Racing Components, I think was the name of the company. They were in Covington, Georgia, or Conyers, I can't remember. I said, okay, who do I ask for? And he goes, I'm Barry Grant. Okay, I didn't, he was nobody at the time. He was working for TRC. So he said, you come down and see me Monday or Tuesday, and I'll get you the right stuff. We'll get this thing straightened out. He goes, I want your fuel to the front of the car in 30 seconds, 1 gallon of gas. Okay. So I went down there and saw him Monday or Tuesday. He's down there working at TRC. He sold me a roll of 1/2-inch aluminum fuel line and a pump, a Holly pump, and a regulator. And we put all that on there. And sure enough, that was one of the problems I had. That was just one of them, but that was a big one. And we ran it, and it cleaned up the car, and I was able to tune it and get the stop shooting ducks, and we were able to get it to settle down and start running better, and eventually I got it all straightened out. Well, a couple of years we were great. It would fill a gallon of gas in 35 seconds. So a couple of years go by. We are racing, and we built a new motor. Now we're trying to run 640s, and the car wanted to pop some. In the spring of the year, when we brought it out with the new motor, it was missing a little bit at the top end. And so my instinct is fuel. So I put another blue pump on it with a Y, 2 lines off the tank with a Y through the filter to the front of the car. And that straightened it out for the moment. And so we went on, raced all year, heat of the summer, no problem. Fall comes around, we raced every weekend back then. We were chasing points at Dallas at Southeastern Dragway. And towards the end of the year, air cooled off. And the darn car popped again, started popping. And I had jetted it up. This was like an 850 Holly. And the factory jets, which is typically a good baseline to start with, was about 86, 88, something like that. I can't remember exactly. But I was way north of that. I was like up in the 90s in jets, 92s. And I'm like, this is way beyond the jet line, what this carburetor is supposed to take. And I knew something else was going on. So I had this crazy thought. One Saturday morning before we raced on Saturday evening, I put a Y block at the front of the car. And I ran the Y block, off the Y block, 2 regulators. One regulator fed the front bowl, one regulator fed the back bowl, and then I connected them in the middle to where they were interconnected, interlocked. And then I run my regulator, my gauge off of that. And I adjusted the regulators to make them 6 pounds like they were supposed to be. And we went out to the track. Didn't change nothing else. The first lap, the car started missing because it was flooding. It was flooding. So we come back to the trailer. We bring the jets back down into the 80s, 86, 88 back. We went back to the factory settings for that Holly carburetor. And the car cleaned up. Took a plug reading. Tuned it just a little bit. And away it went. Now, why am I wasting all this time? Here it is. Fuel line on that Jeep is 1/2 inch from the front to the back, or from the back to the front. And if you watch my fuel entry, you'll know that I put a number 8 fitting on the fuel cell, even though it would take a 10, which I could have. But because this stainless steel is so hard to use, I didn't want to have to try to flare to a number 10 fitting. Plus, I don't know how you'd flare a 1/2 inch fuel line to a 5/8 flare. That kind of gets tricky. So anyway, reduced it down to number 8, which is 1/2 inch fitting at the cell. Ran it through this. Now, look at the size of that line. That's a big line. Ran it all the way to the front. I carefully used 1/2 inch flare fittings at the fuel pump on both sides, 1/2 inch to the front, 1/2 inch flare fittings to the fuel filter, top and bottom, 1/2 inch braided steel hose to the regulator, and then from the regulator I split it off. These Holly 600s are single inlets, 3/8 to one, 3/8 to the other Holly carburetor. And I got 2 4s, so I got 4 bowls. And this motor's not making much horsepower. This ain't no beast. It may be someday, but this ain't it. So why am I telling you all this? All right, so when you do all that, you put 1/2 inch line, 1/2 inch flare fittings, all that stuff. Let's say you run a single 4-barrel. Running a Holly blue pump, a good one. Or even bigger, don't matter. Let me show you something. This, my friends, is a Holly. I don't even read it or not. It says right there on the blue, Holly. Holly regulator. Comes with a Holly pump, or you can buy them separately. This regulator's been around. This is the regulator, top regulator. Might even be the same one we used on that race car in 1987, 1988. They still sell them today. I forget what they are, $60, $70. So why did I run 2 regulators and all of a sudden the car got fat? I'll show you why. This is an old regulator, so I can take it apart. Nobody buying a new regulator is going to take them apart and look at them. Only an idiot like me would do that. But let me turn on a lot. Alrighty. Back to the lot. Back to this. Now you can see the Holley right there on the regulator, so I'm not making this up. Look at the orifice that the regulator regulates the gas through. Can you see this? I think you can. That is a 5/16 hole. 5/16, just so you heard me clearly. So now we're running a 1/2 inch fuel line all the way to the front, go all that trouble. And on the bottom of the regulator, it can be flared to a 1/2 inch flare fitting. But look at the inside of that, what it goes down to. 5/16. And that's why that motor went lean, even though I had 2 pumps, 2 1/2 inch lines, and it was still running out of gas at the finish line because the bowls were running low, because the fuel system wasn't keeping up. When I changed it, and you got to have a regulator, and you may not want to use one of these. I'm not knocking Holley. I don't think they know. I'm sure their engineers know, but when I changed to 2, I had 2 5/16 orifices feeding the motor now. Even though still it's only 5/16, but that was enough to fix the situation. On top of that, there's a check ball in here. There, check ball. It restricts flow in itself. So I'm saying to you, your fuel system's only as good as its smallest point. And if you've been good all the way from the pump to the front, take a look at your regulator, especially in a single 4-barrel motor. Alrighty. Hopefully that'll help somebody. And there's a ton of regulators out there today. And honestly, I haven't looked at that many of them, but you should. And I will before I put a bigger regulator. If I go back to a single 4-barrel, even if I don't, with dual 4-barrels, I'm still going to go, when I get ready to step on this thing, and I will, you can bet this will be one of the things I look at. Any questions, any comments? Shoot me a line. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Mad Hatter out.